Bloodstone is really good on this deck. Make sure you pick up Bloodstone. It has a 1 in 2 chance for multiplicative molt on every card. Exponential growth. 100 trigger. Ancient Joker isn't even bad. So the Checkered Deck was up next chronologically in the Gold State grind. Upon completion of the deck, I have some thoughts. But first, what is the Checkered Deck? Instead of 4 suits of 13 each, you start the game with 2 suits of 26 each. People seem to disagree about how impactful this is, but I like to think about it this way. You're starting the game with over 8 tarot cards already applied to your deck. It takes a little bit more than 8 tarot cards to convert a regular deck into the Checkered Deck. And this way, it occupies a similar space to the Zodiac deck. Think about it. When you play Zodiac, you're getting all these tarot cards. You can have many possible goals in mind to focus on fixing your deck towards. One of those could be to make a bunch of hearts or spades. So if that's the kind of game you were looking to play, the Checkered Deck is another option that starts off already there. You're trading off the long-term, admittedly much higher overall value for a shortcut starting the game with a specific, already fixed deck. That's just its role. And as it turns out, that role happens to come with a bunch of different fun consequences. Consider the humble obelisk. Now, I got this one decently late into already a pretty good run. Don't worry about him. But that aside, this deck provides ideal conditions for a downright dastardly pivot into obelisk. You'll be inflating those flush numbers just by playing the game, so whenever you come across obelisk is the perfect time to just start playing high card or whatever until you win. Him being a scaling times molt joker means if you play around the condition, he can fit into pretty much any build, and this deck makes it really easy to play around the condition. Like, yeah. You just don't have to worry about him resetting. If you're struggling to level the hand that you're trying to pivot into, picking up a chips joker can help bring you back up to pace. Stacking times molt like I did here is a strategy, but you know, usually you want to pair it with like some scaling flat molt.
I'm green.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant. Better late than never, I suppose. In situations like this, it can be worth it to purposefully order your jokers poorly to win less and play as many hands as possible. That would have allowed me to get the most scaling out of both obelisk and my plus molt here, but I was not too worried about being optimal. And this synergy is just one of the fun ways that the Checkered Deck enables something cool in kind of a silly way. I intend to pull from my final 5 stakes of the Checkered Deck and get into a couple of those other ways. Kind of a deck companion piece, but I'm gonna be upset the whole time. And this isn't comprehensive by any means. I am a certified casual. This game is very deep, and I'm sure there's many branching synergies that I haven't even considered yet. That's one of the things I love so much about this game. But hopefully the runs that I had can inspire some cool stuff on your next checkered runs. It's time to have the Bloodstone conversation. It has a 1 in 2 chance to trigger, but it can on any heart, making it an obvious fit for the deck with all the hearts. It's got a very nice brain off to payoff ratio on this deck, and this is the rubric for today. What on other decks is a high risk, high reward strategy that requires enabling through deck fixing and synergistic jokers, on this deck seems to just work. It's never a bad idea. Think about it. How are you going to enable Bloodstone?
What the fuck am I gonna do with this thing now?
You're gonna make hearts. It's one of those times molt upon scoring jokers, meaning it cares about things like retriggering and card modifiers a lot more than others would. Foil and bonus are okay, but fall off in the late game. Eventually you'll be getting most of your chips from the played hand itself, the simplest of course being flushes. So if you can, it helps to prioritize things like glass or polychrome. Stacking times molt will exponentially supercharge your Bloodstone. Now the simplest hand for this is flushes, but it's also really good on this deck to go for flush 5s and flush houses. You actually start off in a really good position for them too, with half of your deck being identical to the other half. You are 1 death card away from being able to unlock flush house for that run. Trading card and DNA are both something to keep a lookout for to this end. Being able to destroy a card every blind or make copies of your polychromes and blue seals especially are going to make the transition to the harder hands a lot smoother. Remember, if you are going flushes as opposed to flush 5s or houses, you can still be perfectly effective with Bloodstone without fixing the Checkered Deck any further, especially when you pair him with his best friend. It is almost always worth it when playing this deck to pick up what has been affectionately dubbed the speculative oops. This is when you pick up oops all 6s in anticipation of coming across Bloodstone. 6s is a really interesting card whose applications are varied and quite useful. 50% chances, such as Bloodstones, become guaranteed outcomes. 25% 25% chances become 50%, and so on. This joker turns Bloodstone into an ancient joker that doesn't rotate. It doubles the value of hallucination and business card by guaranteeing their triggers, but most importantly, it doubles the chances for wheel. My favorite interactions with it, though, are when it boosts a negative probability. For instance, it makes both Michelle and Cavendish twice as likely to extinct themselves. I guess Michelle, that's a good outcome. But it also makes glass more fragile. There's now a 50% chance for it to break. If you want to pair that with Glass Joker, you're a real one. Oh, and a bonus tip, if you were not aware, glass face cards breaking will upgrade Canio, that guy. Now, given that you start the game with, again, twice as many hearts, you don't need 6s for your Bloodstone. Just have a bunch of them. I don't know why I found so many Bloodstones in these games, but that's just what every game devolved into, almost. Look at this. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, and you could just do it. You can just do it because it's already fixed. This game in particular, I didn't record the beginning of, but I had the 1 foil Bloodstone, and I got an Ankh and a Spectral Pack. I don't know how you're going to show me that and expect me not to instantly go akimbo Bloodstones. I picked up the occasional Dingus to fill in the gaps until coming across Invisible Joker, with which I made another Bloodstone. Regardless of how many Bloodstones you end up with, as long as you're remembering to level your hands, you will be successful with it. On the topic of leveling hands, did you know that's really easy on the Checkered Deck? It turns out when you can repeatedly assemble the same hand at all points in the game, this cuts down on a lot of variance for almost every way to level up a particular hand. Spaceman, buffed by 6s, plus you almost never have to worry about him activating on a dud hand, because if you want, you almost never have to play something that's not a flush. Burnt Joker, there's a flush in your opening hand more often than not. Just be wary of a small counter synergy with Trading Card, since they both look at the first discard of a round. If you have both of them, you either won't be using Trading Card, or you'll be leveling up high card instead of flush, which you want in some situations, but just keep that in mind. Telescope, why yes, I have played only one hand type this game, thank you for noticing. Blue Seals, I don't have anything witty to say about this one. Blue Seals are just really good. What I can do to illustrate this point, though, is some dumb shit. I can't even call this a challenge run because it was both viable and not that challenging. I'm gonna call it the stationary build. I got this holographic certificate, I got a stencil. This entire game was find the blue seals, play the flushes, and that was the extent of the thinking. This is Checkered Deck stripped down to its base elements. This is pure precious checkers. Look, I even found another Bloodstone, but chose not to take it just to commit to the bit, and that is how much I love you. Now, Certificate does a couple things. It can be a source of a lot of blue seals, so you're going to be upgrading your flushes almost guaranteed twice per blind. If you pick up a Crystal Ball voucher, that'll let you use up to 3 blue seals every blind. But this also thicks up your deck with a bunch of suits that you can't really make flushes out of. Think about it. When will you ever play, say, a diamond if you're playing flushes every hand? Even if you have 5 of them, you're still gonna have at least 5 times as many hearts or spades. For that reason, it doesn't really come up in practice. Plus, there's tarot cards, general strategy. If you have blue seals, dump some hands as discards to really prioritize digging for them. I know, other hand types, the rest of the video game, it's okay. We can make it through this together. As a side note, and this applies to any 5-card hand build, make sure you don't accidentally play the wrong hand, for example, a straight flush when trying to play a flush. The game will prioritize the quote-unquote better hand, not the higher leveled one. Oh, I guess I should talk about Stencil. Stencil is great when you have only 2 jokers. No further comments. Stationary build. But what if you could level up your flushes for even more freer? Legendaries are fun. I hardly ever see them, but I did find 1 each on both orange and gold stake. Perkeo is one of those jokers that is its own archetype. It is, I'm pretty sure, the best enabler for those endless mode Naneinf builds that have a lot of math and optimization behind them, and hey look, it's Bloodstone again. Remember, the one piloting in these games is me, and I'm dumb and bad. I am not gonna do Perkeo the justice that it really might deserve in this video, sadly. If you want to see the true limits of Perkeo demonstrated by someone actually quite good at the game, there's plenty out there that I can highly recommend, from Balatro University, ZainoTV, and Roffle Lite, but we are just looking at that brain off to payoff ratio. And oh boy, for our purposes, can you turn your brain off with this one. While the ceiling is quite high, the skill floor floor is very low with Perkeo, especially if you're just worried about beating Anti-8. The Perkeo observatory combo, if you were not aware, allow me to be the first to tell you, it's nasty. It's nasty. And you aren't, like, guaranteed to find the tier 2 voucher, but oh my god. I don't have any tech here. What am I supposed to say? A lot of the nitty-gritty, skitty-bitty with Perkeo is decision-making deep into endless, which is, admittedly, pretty uncharted territory for me. I always choke around like anti-14 whenever I try. I tend to just go for that anti-8 victory, which the Perkeo observatory combo will single-handedly carry you through. Like with any strategy that relies on vouchers, in the first 8 antis, it's really hard to go for a specific one. You don't have many tools to influence the vouchers that you see. You always have like cola and voucher skip tags, which you do have more flexibility to go for on this deck, but none of this is guaranteed. I feel like I haven't seen a voucher skip tag since like 1896. Even if you never end up with observatory, at worst, Perkeo is a free level every shop, and using it to duplicate some hanged men and deaths, to use a bunch of those at once, can be really potent. But otherwise, you can play flushes and level them. You know the deal by now. And really, this was the sentiment that I was left off with upon completion of the deck's gold stake. I'm not a top player by any means, but the checkered deck does feel a lot less involved to pilot. I got a bunch of victories in a row that felt like really similar games to each other. The checkered deck is like junk food. It's good fun, but not super complicated, and if it's all you eat, you'll get fat and complacent. It's bad for brain development. I felt myself getting worse at the game as I played, which is impressive considering how little room to get worse I already had. In the way that the black deck can be considered the game's hard mode, I would argue that the checkered deck could be considered quote-unquote easy mode even over plasma. And this isn't to say that checkered is more powerful than plasma. Like I said, the way that I assess the decks, this one is just a worse version of Zodiac, but hear me out. It's a little more complicated than that. Think about why the black deck is so hard. It's because it messes with your fundamentals. It demands more from each decision you make than other decks by taking away 25% of your opportunities to score, but also on blue stake and above, that's about 20% of your chances to see more cards. Decisions made when picking your hands and discards become more emphasized. I wrote, you need to make better decisions per decision. In that same way, the checkered deck makes the game easier by softening the need for some of those fundamentals, such as picking your hands and discards. It demands less from and de-emphasizes your decisions by always having the simplest be the most reliable one. Now, the checkered deck doesn't preclude you from going for other strategies. It's not that the deck railroads you into a certain playstyle. The best players won't be seen just doing the same thing every game and hoping it works even when playing the checkered deck. But that less thoughtful approach is the most facilitated by this deck. Let's talk about flushes. The math has been done on this topic. There's a wonderfully detailed video about the probability of different hand types done by Autumn Chiu on YouTube, and I really hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Definitely check that out if you're interested in the numbers, but the math supports the idea that in general, on a normal deck with 4 suits, flushes are the most consistent hand to go for when discarding relative to its high base scoring value. This consistency is balanced by its slower level scaling when compared to straights, for example. It's the easiest strong hand, and this role is reinforced in the design of the jokers, flushes being tied with pairs at 2x mult. And as you know, this deck's whole thing is being the flush deck. It makes the easiest, most reliable hand even easier and more reliabler. You're not exercising the money management and decision making that goes into fixing a deck in this way. You're just starting off the game with permission to replace any nuanced decision with just go for the flush. So if you're trying to learn the game, too much checkered in your balanced Balatro breakfast won't properly prepare you for perils and problems pertaining to parallel picks. It's a barrel of dicks. Sorry, I don't know what came over me there. What I'm trying to say is that the deck exercises a very narrow skill set. Therefore, it is a barrel of dicks. Hello, the video's over now. You can go watch whatever you do. I'm just gonna be yapping. I wasn't going to make this video. This project actually started off as my own personal Ancient Joker journey, which didn't end up happening. That seems to be happening on the next deck, the Zodiac deck. I am still gonna make that video. I really want to. I had a lot of very helpful people chiming in on that wildcard video to defend Ancient Joker a little bit. You know, I learned some really cool tech that I didn't know before. I wanted to open my mind and really evaluate Ancient Joker outside of its role as a wildcard enabler. But I just had to get this out of my system first. I will repent. The Ancient Joker video is coming. As a bonus for sticking it out all the way to the end, and here's I don't know, here's a video of my cat